Hey guys, my name is Bricks, and today I am finally ready to release the all new revised Boomer tutorial. If you guys have watched my first Boomer tutorial, I am very sad to let you know that that tutorial is no longer valid because of, I believe, that Boomer got some shadow alteration, which is not kind of told by the developers, but because I play Boomer quite frequently but not religiously, I noticed that difference. So I'm just here to make a new Boomer tutorial, and this time I'm going to make it a lot more refined than my first one. So I'm gonna break it down into 5 separate parts. Okay, the first part I will be talking about the specifications of Boomer. Okay, the second one, the second chapter, I will be talking about the power ratio, wind ratio, and also wind compass calculation. And on the third chapter, I will be bringing up how to shoot as a low angle boomer. And on the fourth chapter, I will be bringing up the fact on super sky shots. Now, on the last but not least, if you really want to graduate from Boomer, you're going to need that 5th chapter, which is the reverse Boomer angle hit. So with that out of the way, hope you guys enjoy the brand new Boomer tutorial from here. And I believe it will, this ultimate tutorial will be the only one of its kind in English at the very least. So be sure to subscribe and look for the upcoming videos for chapters 2, 3, 4, and 5. See you guys in the next one. Bye. Hey guys, welcome to chapter 1 on the Boomer tutorial. Before we get into the real fine detailed and motor stuff, we just need to know a little bit on Boomer. So this tutorial, or this chapter in particular, they are for players who's just starting out using Boomer and they want to know a little bit more. Now again, for full disclosure guys, this tutorial is quite lengthy in all 5 chapters if you add it all together. If you feel that it's just too much time for you to invest in order for you to play this tank, then I highly recommend you try other tanks. Because Boomer is a special tank, which, a lot of the design on Boomer is not like standard tanks, so obviously you just need to know the specification of the tank before you can really isolate every single win and calculate accordingly. So basically what I'm trying to say is this will be a very long tutorial, and if you don't have the patience for it, please play another tank. So with that out of the way, let's start, and I'll try to go over the really boring stuff really quick. Okay, starting off with Boomer, the HP is at glass cannon level, which is 600 and 649 once it's maxed out. The damage is relatively good, but you got to really remember, playing Boomer is, there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons, and there are as much or as many cons as pros do come with. So we'll start by talking about the pros, which is the biggest elephant in the room, which is the 649 HP. Most of the time you will be stacking up with defense, or formerly known as damage reduction, in order for you to be able to survive if you're playing Boomer in the starter position. If you plan on playing Boomer as a drop, of course your goal is to just get SS immediately or as fast as you can, so that you can land your one-hit KOs. But if you're like me, I like to play Boomer as a starter, so I like to stack a lot of defense or damage reduction on top so that I can stay alive. Now, when you are playing Boomer, there are a few things that you want to look out for, which is what exactly is your role in the game, right? So when I am playing Boomer, my goal is to make sure I always land my hits first. Duh. But ultimately, it's not for me to build SS. It's more so for me to tag clouds and do as much damage so that I build aggro and let my partner build his SS so that we gain the SS advantage when, you know, on our 4th turn or something like that, right? Because since they are so focused on getting me before I get my SS, but the ultimate goal for me is not to build SS, it's just to dish damage, they are focusing the wrong target, right? On the off chance that they do ignore you and all that, that's when you need to start building SS. So since you are starting first, on blind wins, shoot low angle, right? But on the 2nd or 3rd turn, if you realize that they're not getting you anymore, or even at all, start going for the SS, and yeah, tag as many clouds as you can. But you really gotta just isolate, is it clouds or is it SS that I'm building? And that's what you really want to look out for as Boomer when you are playing in the starter position. Another thing to note with Boomer that I find more of a weakness rather than a strength is that Boomer is an animal type, which is, if you see here on the graph, animal type gets the least amount of bonus. And compared to, you know, all the other 2 types, they get about 5% damage increase and all that stuff, where animal only gets 3. And on top of that, most of the time, I believe, starters from your opponents, it's usually an animal type or a machine type. So technically speaking, you either get no bonus or you get a 5% penalty, basically. Sometimes, and you know, obviously there are chances that starting positions from the opposite side, they are shielded like lightning. That's when you can, you know, kind of get an advantage there, but it's not a lot, right? It's 3%. So for me, I personally think the animal type is the weakest type out of the 3, even though animal types kind of do the most damage in its own way. So that's how I see it. One last thing to note about Boomer's specification, or actually before we get into the real details of the specs, is that despite all the negative things I have to say about Boomer, the one good thing is that the natural DPS on Boomer is relatively high. You get 3 projectiles, meaning going through clouds, you just get that much more bonus damage. And on top of that, the infamous SS, which is the one-hit shooter, one-hit KO. Despite the nerf that it's gotten in the last few updates, I think, you can still manage to pretty much one-hit dropkick anyone, except maybe Elephant with max defense. But other than that, like if you're playing up against a shield type, it doesn't really matter if they have dual helmet. I always get them mixed up. You'll most likely drop kick them no matter what, unless they are lightning with dual helmet. So other than that, yeah, that is the one of the main features why people love playing Boomer, or why people want to learn how to play Boomer, and which is why you are here to watch and learn Boomer. So with that out of the way, let's get right into the real specifications of Boomer so that you can know what to expect when you are playing this tank. Hey guys, welcome to the medium AI, where I can really take my time and talk about Boomer and, you know, the properties of Boomer, not just on the weapon 1 in the, or actually I don't really talk about weapon 1 in this tutorial, but not so much about the weapon 2 or the SS. It's more so about the tank itself, right? Okay, so I think I missed it, but I'll just go right into it. Boomer's climb is pretty much horseshit, so you're gonna notice that Boomer's gonna get stuck most of the time, but that's okay, because Boomer's firing angle range is actually quite good. So even if you have to shoot, you know, backwards, or, you know, tilt your tank a little down or up, you'll still, actually not up, if you tilt your tank down, you can still manage to get some good high angle shots, Now, if your boomer, if you see here, you see where the eyes are. If the eyes are pointing straight up, which I call eyes to the skies, you're pretty much fucked. Meaning you will only be limited to S1. And how are you ever in that situation? The infamous Burger King Beetle King. All right, so if Beetle King gets a good shot on you and your boomer's eyes facing up the skies, you're pretty much done for the entire game. So Boomer's Climb is actually horseshit, which is why I added extra climb to make a difference. But honestly, 74 in total isn't gonna change all that much. So yeah, that's just one thing to note. And on top of that, Boomer has the highest the accuracy naturally. So Octor is not that big of a threat to Boomer unless there are double Octor. And other than that, I think Boomer, Arrow, and maybe Phoenix can confidently shoot past your screen. So it is a little difficult to manage if you rely on looking at the white line like I do. But then we'll get into that in chapter 4, and also on chapter 2. So be aware for those 2 chapters, and make sure to subscribe in order for you to get those 2 chapters. All right. So let's really get down to Boomer. All right. First of all, Boomer's range, even though you can shoot, past your screen and all that stuff, like Boomer's range is actually quite shit. And by that, I mean, whenever the wind is west wind, headwind, meaning wind direction going towards you, not with you. Yeah, west wind completely, it's horseshit. And I want to give you an example as to why it's horseshit. All right. So just for you guys' sake, I want you guys to focus on this little transform marker right there. Sometimes I call it the little clitoris, but I normally call it the transform marker. Okay. In order for you to know how big the map is, that transform marker is your best friend, because on certain maps, even though it looks like it's far and all that, it may not be. And mainly it's because your screen adjusts to scale, so it's hard to really determine sometimes. But the ruler, in terms of how you measure things, the ruler is also measured with scale, so you can kind of identify whether or not the map is big or small. In this instance, this map is not relatively big, but it is on the bigger side. And as you can see here, where the transformer marker dips down, you're gonna notice the crosshair can't go any further forward. All right, so I want you guys to be aware, and this is how I usually start my game. I pull unless I already know the map, I pull as far as forward as I can, and I make sure the transform marker is in line with my boomer, right? The elevation is the same. That way I know where the transform marker is, which is exactly where the tank is right here. That is 30 spaces. And for those of you who don't know what I mean by 30 spaces, you can turn off the ruler simply by pressing this button right here, right? On a full ruler, there are 5 spaces on each side, 5 on the left and 5 on the right, with the crosshair right in the middle. And when I say 3 full rulers, I essentially just mean 30 spaces, or 6 half rulers, right? From here to where you are, that's 30 spaces. So that's very, very important, not only to Boomer, but to every other tank as well, because GBPC gives you an angle number, whereas GBM does not. They give you a ruler instead. So it's very important to know, or to use the ruler to gauge what your white line is doing, which is essentially what your angle number is, right? And I'll talk a little bit more about that after I mention this little transform marker. And the reason why I say Boomer's range is utter shit is, imagine if you're in a real game and it is west wind, headwind, and let's say at the highest number 12, right? What ends up happening is your range is limited to 22 and a half spaces, right? If you really measure where 22 and a half spaces is, essentially right here, 5, about 10, 15, and I make, all right, and 20. Oh, sorry, 22 spaces. So I got a -7. I got a -8. All right, 5 and about 8. So honestly, if it is 12 wind, as far as I can shoot, as far as the boomerang will go, is about right here. So any tank with straight shooting capability can already outrange Boomer. So that's why Boomer is usually played as a starting position or a tank. I mean, a drop tank position, mainly so that you can just drop him anywhere and, you know, shoot away. But I personally like playing Boomer as a starter if I am playing with a friend, just to kind of stay away from the back, because as you can see here, from the back, you're already like 7, you know, between 5 to 10 spaces behind, right? So you're just losing that much more. On a bigger map, sometimes where the 30 space mark meets is right at your enemy's front tank, right? So you can just imagine if it's west wind already at start, chances are you're gonna have to resort to S1, which is really difficult because with Boomer you want to be able to use S2 because that does more damage. And playing Boomer, honestly, it's all about DPS. It's all about how much damage you can dish every single turn. Am I trading my HP for my damage on a greater scale, right? That's how I see Boomer. Another thing to note with Boomer is wait, what was the other thing? Oh, remember I'm literally just talking about 30 spaces. I also want you to this is not the best map because the platform isn't perfectly aligned. On another map it is, but I gave up trying to find that map. Anyways, I just want you guys to know, okay? When I'm talking about spaces, 0 space is basically where you are, right? It's not where your partner is. It's not where the totem is. 0 out of 0, like 0,0, is exactly where you are. All right. So when I say, I don't know, 4 space in front of your enemy tank, it means what? 4 spaces right there. 4 spaces behind, right there. All right. Another spec that you want to know about Boomer is from 0 to 15 spaces. All right. 0 to 15, which ideally is where that totem is. Where the fuck did my dot go? Oh, there we go. Ideally, where this totem is, in line, right around there, that's about 15 spaces, all right? The thing with Boomer is that you really need to know about that 15 space, okay? Literally, 0 to 15, you need to be very mindful about. 0 to 30 is basically your max distance, all right? But the distance between 0 to 15, it's so vital. That's because if your enemy tank is within this range, oh, damn it, 0 to 15, within this range, and you want to shoot full power or whatever it is on certain wind directions, it will change the outcome of how much you actually need to compromise. And in chapter 2, I will talk about, you know, how to read the wind compass, what's the difference between power ratio, and what's the difference between wind ratio, and all that. But for this chapter 1, I'm telling you right now, if you don't know what you need to do within the spaces of 0 to 15, you are not going to have a fun time playing Boomer. You're going to think you know, and when you shoot and you miss by a lot, aka like not even hitting the target, then you're going to be like, something, it's either me or it's the tank. And you're going to think it's the tank, but ultimately it's you. Yeah, so just to kind of recap as to why that 15 space is so important is because it's really difficult to show because the elevation is not perfectly fine. You know what? I'm gonna go and try and find the map that I'm looking for just to be very, very clear for you guys. So stick tuned as I am going to go and try to find that fucking map. Okay, I spent the last 10 minutes rotating maps. Can't get the one that I want, so this is the next best thing. To that, I just want to say, developers, fuck you hard, in the face, and fuck you again. Anyways, okay, let's get back to the tutorial. Sorry, guys. Okay, so just to recap before I went on my daily, or my little break. The reason why I really want a specific map is because there's another map that's very similar like this, that is a little wider, which is much easier to kind of navigate. But let's just say right here where the transform marker is, that's 30 spaces, aka 3 full rulers, okay? And before we went on this journey to look for that fucking map, what were we talking about? Oh, right, 15 spaces. Okay, so if, let's see, you are 0, all right? Technically speaking, what's in front of you is plus and what's behind you is minus, okay? But we're not going to talk about the minus spaces yet. We're just going to talk about what's in front of you from 0, all right, to, all right, let's measure it. Let's measure it just to be accurate so I'm not bullshitting you. All right, that's, let's see, good. Let's be accurate. Let's be fucking accurate. Okay, so this is 10 spaces, all right? So at the end of my ruler, not where the crosshair is, right around there, all right, that's 10 spaces. So what, if I need 15, let's say I need 15. God damn me, my shaky hands. All right, so, all right, let's just theoretically say, all right, right here is 15 spaces. I might be off by 1 or 2. Okay, I'm not off by 2, but maybe I'm off by 1. Whatever, fuck it. All right, so that means the crosshair's just right in front of the fucking turtle. All right, the reason why, and if you guys have already watched my first tutorial to try and learn Boomer, I talk a lot about the white line angle. And just to recap, GBPC gives you the angle number, so it's much easier to identify that. GBM, thanks developer, you didn't fucking give us that shit. We have to figure it out. And so what I figured out is 0 to 15 spaces, whatever this fucking angle, titties, whatever this angle is, all right, that's the angle you need to know, because what I'm about to explain to you will make a lot of sense afterwards. Okay, so if you're hearing me, all right, while you're editing, maybe during the edit, if you can just add a line here and then add a horizontal line and then maybe add a 45-degree line, so that we can kind of see what angle number it is. I'm guessing it is a 70-degree angle, but I won't know for sure. But, all right, let's just say at full power that I yank back all the way, right? 0 to 15 in certain wind directions for most cases. Actually, no. Okay, I'm just going to tell you. From southwest, in between southwest and south, and north and south and northeast, if you are shooting within this range, meaning if your enemy is within 0 to 15 spaces, anywhere in between, okay, the calculation is slightly different. And I'll explain why. Actually, I will explain that in the later chapter, in chapter 4, because that is actually very important if you actually want to know how to hit your super skies every single time. All right, if you guys are looking to learn how to shoot super sky, chapter 4 is your best friend. But I personally would just go and go through all chapters 1 through 5, just so you really know how to play Boomer. Okay, so without that out of the way, another thing to note is I mentioned 0 to 15 spaces if it was full power. All right, I'm gonna dial down the power to about 50% of what Boomer can shoot, and I want you to tell me what you notice here. All right, so this is about, I think I'm off by a little bit. All right, so as you can see here, right, where the crosshair meets, that's about 7 spaces, maybe 6, 7. So if I'm telling you 15, what's 15 divided by 2, my friends? It's roughly 7.5. All right, so I can safely say at around here, at full power, right? That's 0 to 14, 0 to 15 space. At about 50% power, I'm expected that my enemy is within this range, right? If your enemy is in this range, from 0 to about here, and you're shooting not high angle, right? Just mid angle, or like mid power. Your power ratio is about 50%. Then obviously that space changes. Now the wind direction that I mentioned to you, which is between southwest and south, north and northeast, that changes if your white line angle is within this angle right here. Oh, fucking shit. I just fucked it up. Alright, let's see it. Let's try and redo this. Alright. I do it for science. I gotta do it for science. Alright, so 50%. Dial it down. And the reason why I say this is because as I'm dialing it down, while I dial down the power scroll on the side, the angle doesn't change. And I want you guys to know, the angle doesn't change. That means when your white line is within this angle, it doesn't matter what your power ratio is, as long as the white line is within this angle or above, it will affect your calculation on certain winds. I always fall into the trap of this, even though I play Boomer quite frequently, not religiously, but frequently. I always fuck up because of this damn white line angle, right? So, just remember, right? I'm talking about full power. It's 0 to 15 spaces. At 50% of what Boomer can shoot, it's about 7 spaces, okay? That's what you really, really need to know about Boomer, which is the space rule, which is 0 to 15. 0 to 30 means your max range and all that stuff. And by max range, I'm talking about headwind range, okay? If you have tailwind, I mean, you can shoot maybe as far as what arrow can do. But we're not talking about tailwind right now. We're talking about, max range at headwind. So, yeah. Anything else I need to let you guys know in chapter 1 other than that? Let me think about it. I'm going to take a water break and I'll be right back. All right. One more thing before I let you go in chapter 1 is I want you guys to know what the white line is doing and what the red line also means, okay? Again, like I said, if your white line angle goes above or like above this area and beyond, right? Your wind calculation is a little different. We'll talk a little bit more on wind calculation in chapter 2. But right now, I just want you guys to know, if you guys don't already know, the white line is whatever the white line is, right? Like it doesn't, it's just how it shoots. Now with the red line, your trajectory does not go off course. It will always stay straight as intended on the white line. Now, one thing to note is Boomer's weapon 2 and also weapon 1 acts as if it is a pendulum swing, or imagine like a rod bolted down to the ground and you pivot that rod. That's what it's doing. So this transform marker up here is basically where the pendulum starts. And if you imagine like a grandfather clock, you know, the red line will just swing left, swing like your dad's saggy, elongated balls. It swings left or right, swings left or right. Now, in lower angles, obviously right around here, that red line doesn't need to be adjusted for, because if you know, like longer the rod, right, it's more, you need to compensate more at the end of the rod, because if you move the upper rod by like a millimeter, at the bottom it could have moved like maybe 5, 10, 20 millimeters, I don't know, right, depending on how long your rod is, aka how long is your shtick. Shtick. Anyways, that is one thing to note about Boomer, because that is very, very important when you are planning to shoot Super Skies. And another thing to note is when you are shooting, your horizontal wind, or actually all directions of the wind really affects this white line. All right, the horizontal wind affects the red line, meaning it sways left or right, if it's diagonal wind, let's say, you know, like west, southwest or northeast, that doesn't affect the red line as much, because you can see here this red line is diagonal on its own, right? It's the cross diagonal that will affect it, meaning if you look at the direction right now and the polar opposite direction, that will affect the red line quite a bit as well, right? Because it's no longer in what we call it neutral wind. If the direction, the wind direction is either pointing that way or down that way, the red line, right, in its natural path moves like that as well. So it's not perfectly diagonal, like perfectly southwest northeast diagonal, but it's close enough where it does not affect it all that much. So if you are shooting, let's say, blind wind, and it is tailwind northeast, chances are, don't worry about what the red line is doing, right? Because the red line's not going to sway left or right all that much. Worry about the first fucking transform marker, because that's what's going to be affected in low angle, right? If for instance the direction is northeast, right? You can imagine this white dot, it's gonna move up more, right? Northeast direction, but the red line stays the same. So theoretically, right? You may not need to adjust all that much, and you just have to play it by feel. Certain maps, it's naturally higher than others. So if my worst nightmare is getting the northeast direction wind on a blind shot. So any other than that, like let's say right now at northwest, right? I can safely assume to put my marker right around there because I know, even though yes, that line is going to be affected all a little bit, that white dot not so much. It's gonna still be pushed up right around there. So as long as it's low angle, I mean, I'm going to be fine. Imagine if the wind is blind right now. I don't know it's for. Chances are I'm gonna put it. I think even that's too much. I don't know. I just fucking point it right out. I'm fucking right. See, so you just need to know what direction cancels out what, right? And so, yeah, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about wind compass, power ratio, and what wind ratio means. Some of you may not know, but that's how I kind of read the wind compass at the very least. And I think some of you might have asked me to kind of explain how to read the wind compass properly. I'm just gonna let you know a little spoiler alert for chapter 2. The wind number is just an indicator, all right, based on the direction that it's pointing at. That is going to be the ultimate decider on what the indicator number ends up being. So with that being said, I'm gonna just leave it to you as is for chapter 1. I hope this is informational or educational for you, enough for you to want to try to look for chapter 2, 3, 4, and 5. But until then, I will see you guys in the next video, and don't forget to subscribe in order to be able to look and search for chapter 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.